Welcome to the second video on the development of the MyDate class. This is where we pretty much left off from the last video, where we established getters and setters. See, right now the properties of the MyDate are hidden. They're private. And if something is private, another class, this driver class, cannot access those properties whatsoever. So we needed to provide some getter functions to get that information for the driver class, and we also had to provide some setters, and those setters had to be had to have some if statements to prevent some bad data from entering into that object. So let's go and make this a good object, and we're going to see that, if you look at it, this program does work, but the problem is, say you had a lot of properties, a lot of attributes that the class you're developing requires. See, right now all we have are 3 properties: day, month, and year, and it's possible that you could have 1,000 properties that class has to maintain. And so right here, you're going to have a bunch of, first off, I can identify what the properties of this class is, because these variables here are not defined inside a method. If they were defined inside a method, they would be local variables. Okay, so local variables are not what we have here. These are variables that are defined outside of methods. They must be properties. And so pretend you saw 1,000 of these private variables. Then you'd have to have 1,000 getters and 1,000 setters, and in order to initialize this, you'd have to have 1,000 set statements, and that gets old real quick. So wouldn't it be nice to provide a capability of initializing the object right when you start to create it? In other words, you're trying to create the date class, and the new operator will do that. See, what the new operator does is it tries to locate memory big enough to hold all the fields that are internal, that you define internal to the class. And what you want is, and by default, all those fields would be zeroed, guaranteed. But wouldn't it be nice to take this and say, maybe put the number 7 in here, and the number 12 in there, and the number 2020 in there? See, I have an error right now, but that's because I didn't provide that facility yet. But it would be really nice, because then I can just get rid of all these set statements, and the program is shorter and sweet. And so in order to provide that capability of initializing the object right when you're creating it, you need to develop what's called a constructor. And so the constructor, let's go here, that's the next phase of development, okay, of a class. Is you got your getters and setters, and let's go toward the, I suppose we can put the constructors right after the data here. That's what we can do. We have to make the constructor public so the external class can construct it. And a constructor is also known as an initializer. That's the only purpose of a constructor. In fact, a constructor looks like a method, but you can never call it. This is a special method that only the new operator can access when you create the object. So we need to develop it in a certain way. The constructor cannot have a return type. Don't put void. Don't do that. Don't have it return an integer. They return nothing. They have to have the same name as the class. Okay, and it looks like a method, but that's a constructor. Now this constructor that I want to create is got 3 parameters, 3 integers. So what I'm going to do is say integer month, integer day, integer year. Okay, those are the 3 fields, and I think right off the bat that'll fix this problem. Yep, it fixes it nicely. Okay, and now we can introduce another error, but we'll talk about that in a second. So what we're going to do here is say, well, how do we fix this? What do we got to do? Well, you could go ahead and say month equals M, day equals D, right? You're initializing the field. Year equals Y. You could do that, but you'd be horribly wrong. It will work, but can you see what the problem is? I'll let you think about it a little bit. Okay, The problem basically is, what's to stop you from putting a -7 there? Okay, that -7 will come in as the month, and that -7 goes into the month field, and you've defeated the whole purpose of preventing bad data going into the class. So, can you propose a way to fix that? I think you can. If you think about it, you've got setters that check this. So you can call a class can call its own methods. You could say set date, set month. Okay, pass it the month, and what you do is you're leveraging the if statement that you've already created. Do the same thing with set day for the day, and set year for the year. Perfect. Nice, nice, nice. Now, why do we get an error here? Because here's the problem. All right, this is a constructor. The purpose of a constructor is to initialize the object. Okay, and we are initializing the object. But as soon as you create a constructor, then you're telling the system that you must use that constructor. Okay, and we're using the constructor, but now you're saying, the system says, well, the constructor that you created has to have 3 parameters, and so where's the 3 parameters? So what we want to do then is say, well, what do we want this thing to do? How do we want to handle the situation where that we have no parameters? And what I'm going to do right now is say, well, I need to be able to create an object with no parameters, and that's called the default. When you get the default constructor is one that takes no parameters, and the simplest way to do that, because we went out our way of defining a constructor, what we're going to do is define another constructor. Remember, no return type, no parameters, and simply do that. And have it do nothing. Okay. In which case, we're going to support the construction of a date. Problem here is all the fields are going to be 0, and so inherently those fields are going to be zeroed out. But that's bad data. But we want to be able to do, let the person do this. Set the month themselves. We might want to also do something like, say, y.set date, a generic set date where you put an 11, 12, 12, 1967. Okay, basically be able to go ahead and do all these sets in one. That would be convenient. So how do we go about doing this? Then you might argue, well, why don't you just put this up here? Yeah, why don't you just take those 3 parameters and put them up there? I'm trying to be somewhat flexible for the person who uses my class. You need to be somewhat flexible, and so you don't want to force them, to your way of thinking. There's nothing wrong with, defining the variable and setting it manually yourself. So let me show you something that Eclipse does that'll help you create this this method for us. Let's right-click this. Quick fix. Create the method inside the type. Okay, so it's created. I don't like the way where it puts it. It puts it at the bottom, but why don't we put it right here on the set date, right there, and it said I, J, and K. You know what I'm going to do? The first parameter, and I'm going to show you something else too. The first parameter is the month, right? The second parameter is the day. That's more descriptive. And the third parameter is the year. All right, so what I'm going to do is set date is basically calling these other methods. Don't redefine the wheel here. Okay, you want to be able to check if this date is correct. So you call these other methods, but when you call, I would set the year first. Okay, so set the year, pass it the year, then set the month, set the month and pass it the month, and set the day, pass it the day. See, this guy here, the set date, you need to set the month before you set the day, because if you set it, because you need to know about the leap year, and so that to get the maximum, you know, what on February we have to have 29 or 28 days, so that's got to be set first, and so the set date does that for us. And so remember, the key to doing programming, the gospel of programming, is never do something more than once. Okay, so we have this beautiful set date. And I think the main program is actually going to work. There's no errors there. Okay, good. Well, and actually, we don't need this stuff here because the set date does all that. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to say, we're trying to eliminate duplication. Do you see duplication? I see duplication. Set, month, day, year. In fact, the way I did this was wrong. I need to put I want to be consistent. I need to set the year first, then the month, then the day. You've got to make sure that, doesn't this code look exactly the same as this code? Sure, it does. It's the same thing. So don't duplicate that code. What you want to do is call that method. Basically, these three assignments is the same thing as saying set the date of, you know, pass it M, D, and Y, and you're eliminating duplication. Okay, so I think we'll stop right here, and because we've really talked about, the purpose of this video was to talk about constructors. And right off the constructor is called automatically by the system whenever you say new. Whenever you say new, it knows which constructor to call by looking at the parameters. Okay, there's a 3-parameter constructor, and just like any other method, these are constructors, and the system knows which one to call by looking at the parameters. And if you pass it 3 integers, of course it's going to take that, and that's called overloading. So we're taking advantage of overloading. And if I pass it no parameters, then it's going to use this constructor. And you need to define both of them, because as soon as you define one, you have to define all the other options you want to make available. So that's what we got there. And if you have that, you've got to manually initialize the date. And I think so far what we got here, this system will work. Where's my output? My output's still building. Slow machine. Very slow machine. -7. Where's that -7? Yeah, -7. Bad data. Okay, let's run it again. There it is. At least it's we're just displaying the months. So what we're going to do is stop the video here, and we'll pick it up in the next video. We're not quite done. Actually, we're not done at all in developing. First, right now, this class doesn't do much. All we're doing is initializing it, and we're printing the thing back out. But you want this class to do something. Okay, so we'll have it do something in the next few series of videos. All right, take care. Bye.